Vic Mullen, grumpy old Scotsman, how you all doing? So, just a quick bit of news here for you. I forgot to mention this actually, the video that I done yesterday. Tomorrow, I should be able to do the video tomorrow, but there's going to be no... Will I? Actually, hold on. This is Tuesday. Is this Tuesday? Completely lost track of time. Yeah, this is Tuesday. There should be a video tomorrow, but there won't be a video on Thursday, Friday, and possibly Saturday. For all the people that didn't come over here from the vaping channel, I get semi-regular eye operations. I suffer from a disease called Fuchs dystrophy. Fuch''S dystrophy, if you want to Wikipedia or something. It's basically a genetic problem that's ran on my dad's side of the family, and it jumps. It's an odd thing, it seems to jump generations. So my dad's generation never got it, but the generation behind him got it. And now, because my dad didn't get it, I've got it. So it's a weird genetic thing. And yeah, basically I need to go in for it's a very quick operation. I go in I go in Wednesday evening. The operation is going to be done Thursday morning / afternoon, and then I spend Thursday evening and Friday in there for recovery, and I should be kicked out on Saturday morning. So if you don't see any videos until, well, Monday, that's why, because I'll be recovering essentially. Anyway, moving on. Have you noticed that UK politics seems to be screwed up right now? Now, I'm not just talking about the Labour Party. God knows I've been bashing them enough. It's like anything the Labour Party says, it's literally anything they say is stupid. It's like just stupid. And you can't help but bash them for it, but it's getting a bit boring now. So I decided to do this different kind of video, and then probably next week, or maybe even starting tomorrow, if I actually get a chance to do a video tomorrow, I might start getting the boot into the Conservative Party, because quite frankly, they're just as bad. But have you noticed how bad UK politics is now getting? How fractured the political scene for the UK now is. Let me just bring in the ongoing YouGov poll. Now, YouGov, I think people in the US get YouGov as well. Yeah, YouGov is basically an ongoing rolling poll for all sorts of things. It could be for politics, it could be for domestic issues. They've got polls for everything. And this particular one is called the Voting Intention Poll, and it's ongoing and consistently updated. It's updated every couple of days from what I remember. Let's bring this poll in and we'll see just how bad things actually are. Let's just move... Oh, that's the wrong thing I'm selecting. Window capture. Let's just move you over and we'll make you that little bit bigger. How do I do this again? It's not that one. It's not that one either. It's the Alt button. There we go, to bring in the edge. So we've got voting intention, and this is up to date to the 6th of October 2025. That's yesterday. At the very top, at 27% of all people who voted or registered their intention on this poll, 27% are going for Reform UK. Now, that line that you're seeing here, 29, 28, 27, 28, 29, it's bouncing between 27 and 29% consistently. That line may as well just plateau out. They're running at an average of 28% of the vote. They're well above Labour. In fact, Labour's number's not showing up. There it is, 21%. They're well above Labour, 8 points above Labour. They are almost 10 points above the Conservatives at 17%. And then you've got the Green Party at 12%, and you've got the Scottish National Party up here in Scotland at 4%. Now, never has there been a time, not since the interwar period, so we're talking about between 1918 and 1939, the end of the First World War and the beginning of the Second World War, never since the interwar period has both major parties been not in first place. This has never happened before. There was a very, very brief Very, very brief surge from what I remember of the Scottish, no, not the Scottish, the Social Democrat something or other party that the two Davids ran, David Steele and David Owen. But they broke up because they fell out, essentially. But it was the SDP, SDLP, something like that, and they were briefly at the top of the polls for about 2 months. 2 months, and this was a Financial Times poll that was done. I think it was in the early 1980s when Margaret Thatcher came to power. Because we need to remember the first 3 years of Margaret Thatcher being in power, there was a lot of riots going on because she was taking on the trade unions. But what we are seeing here with this poll, ever since going all the way back to here, this is when it started, going all the way back to April of 2025, we have consistently seen a non-major party who only has 5 MPs in the House of Commons consistently leading against the Tories and against Labour. And this has never happened, not since the interwar period, as I've said before. So what led us to this? Well, there's a number of things going on here, but the major points are the reasons that many people are now throwing their weight behind reform. Illegal immigration is a big player in this, and it's been a big player in this since the days of Boris Johnson, since the days of Theresa May being in power as Prime Minister. But it's not just illegal immigration, it's the rape gangs that are going on, that are still going on to this day, where the British politicians have flat out refused to do a statutory investigation into the grooming gangs. And it's not just Labour we're talking about here. The Conservatives knew about this happening as far back as David Cameron and Nick Clegg being in power. But for the 14 years of Tory rule, the Tory party refused to do a statutory investigation. Now, a statutory investigation basically means an independent group is formed, not just of people from the Tory party if they were in power, but people from Labour, people from Clyde Cymru, people from the SNP. All the major parties get all together and they choose and select who investigates, how long they investigate for, what the investigative budget is, and what the outcome is going to cover. Statutory investigation. Both the Tory party and now the Labour party under Keir Starmer has refused to do a statutory investigation on the grooming gangs up and down the country. And we're not just talking about the grooming gangs in England, we're talking about the grooming gangs that are happening up here in Scotland, because there was news released about a few months ago about grooming gangs being caught in Glasgow, which is like 30 miles north of here. There's grooming gangs happening in Northern Ireland, and there is news that came out at the beginning of this year about grooming gangs that were happening in Swansea and Cardiff and Wales. So it's across the whole United Kingdom. Now, these two issues are linked together. Grooming gangs and illegal immigration. Because the grooming gang problem really didn't start getting to the peak of what it is right now until illegal immigration skyrocketed. Did you know that in the 1980s and very early 1990s, roughly speaking, legal immigration, people filling out visas, people filling out actual claim for asylum forms, legal immigration, was running anywhere between 40 to 50,000 per year, which is kind of the average for back then. The same was in France, the same was in Germany. 40 to 50,000 people were claiming legal migration or legal asylum claims. They were landing either in Stansted Airport, they were landing either in Heathrow Airport via the British embassies that took them over here, or they were landing in the port of Dover because they came through France. No change there. Did you know that illegal immigration is now at that same rate every year? 40 to 50,000 people are now crossing the English Channel every single year. And that's just the numbers that are reported about, because some of the numbers, again, because of Labour and because of the Tories, some of the numbers of the landings are not being reported correctly. It could be double that amount for all we know. For all we know, it could be. So you've got the illegal immigration problem. between 40 to 50,000 that we know about illegal immigrants landing on the south coast of England. And at the same time that all this was happening, the skyrocketing, quite frankly, of small, underage, white British girls being groomed, being sexually abused, being sexually assaulted by Pakistani illegal migrants started to skyrocket. Not just in London, not just in Luton, where Tommy Robinson comes from, but across the entire country. Across the entire country. And it's this mix of these two things going on, plus the rising costs of, quite frankly, everything, which was made worse by Ed Miliband under Labour. Now everything's expensive, plus the rising cost of fuel, which was basically the Tories' fault that the Labour Party have kept going, plus the now clampdowns that are going on against free speech, which kind of started with Rishi Sunak, but Labour ramped that up. Both the major parties are basically at fault here. But why did this start? And why aren't they stopping it? Well, here's the thing. Any Prime Minister, whether it be a Tory Prime Minister or whether it be a Labour Prime Minister, has within their powers not to do an executive order style of thing like the President in the United States can do, but they can run roughshod over legislation to push through legislation that they want if they have a big enough majority in the House of Commons. Now, the only major Tory Prime Minister who had a major majority under them was Boris Johnson. Theresa May didn't have a big majority. And before her, David Cameron didn't have a big majority. After Boris Johnson was Liz Truss. She only lasted, 40 days? Didn't have a big majority, because that was carried over from Johnson's majority. And by that point in time, Johnson's majority was going down because he was removing the whip from a lot of the backbenchers that were rebelling against him. By the time Rishi Sunak came along, the Conservative majority was whittled away to practically nothing. Then we've got Keir Starmer with a stonkingly big majority in the House of Commons, a majority not seen since the time of Tony Blair's first premiership. So why is Keir Starmer not doing anything? Well, number one, Keir Starmer used to be a European civil rights lawyer. He used to be one of those major lawyers that you would see arguing the case for illegal migrants not to be deported from the UK. There was a number of occasions where Keir Starmer actually worked with the European Human Rights Court in order to argue the case supporting an illegal migrant remaining in the UK. And this was at the time when Tony Blair was still under his first term as Prime Minister. So he had a massive majority. Go and look it up. Keir Starmer actually defended the rights of illegal immigrants to remain in the UK, even with the government trying to deport them. There was numerous cases going on while it was Tony Blair's first term, where in fact it was Tony Blair's second term by that point in time, Tony Blair's second term, where Keir Starmer actually managed to block more than a dozen deportations of illegal immigrants to the UK because he argued in the defence of the illegal immigrant. So that's the kind of Prime Minister we've got in right now. He wants the illegal immigrants to be in power. But what about the Tories? Well, here's the interesting thing. There's something that was called the Boris Wave. And it's a thing that not a lot of Conservative politicians generally want to talk about. Did you know that illegal and legal immigration quadrupled under Boris Johnson? Bet you didn't know that. Bet you didn't know that. Again, you can find it on the YouGov polls, because they done a track of what was happening with illegal and legal immigration coming into the United Kingdom under each of the Prime Ministers since Thatcher. And there's a huge spike where Boris Johnson's name shows up. Johnson had basically opened up the floodgates. Unknowingly to the rest of the UK, he done it with a European he done it with a European backdoor deal to get Brexit done, as he called it. And part of that deal was essentially opening up Britain's borders to migrants. This is where the problem essentially first began to get really big. Because when Boris Johnson was kicked out of his own party, what Liz Truss tried to do in her only 40 days in office was to kind of close down that deal. But then Tony Blair's name pops up again. Because here's the thing. Yes, Prime Ministers have the option, under law, to run roughshod over existing laws to do with UK parliamentary rule. If two things happen. One, they have a big enough majority. Two, they have the backing in that majority to do it. But the second part of this involves the European Court of Human Rights. Even though we are not part of Europe anymore, the European Court of Human Rights, because of a bill and a deal that Tony Blair signed in 1999, just before the millennium clicked over, because of a deal that Tony Blair signed, it basically means that the European Court of Human Rights essentially has more authority than the UK Prime Minister. Fast forward to 2001, again under Tony Blair, when Tony Blair set up what is essentially now the UK's Supreme Court. Tony Blair put into law that the Supreme Court, along with the European Court of Human Rights, can technically overrule a Prime Minister. I think you know where I'm going with this. A lot of the problems we are seeing right now started during Tony Blair's second term. Because before Tony Blair became Prime Minister, you had old school Conservatives. John Major for the last term, and then 3 terms of Margaret Thatcher. And immigration and illegal immigration all the way through those 15 years of Tory rule, including the rule of the Labour Party before Thatcher came into power, including Ted Heath's run as Prime Minister. Illegal immigration was hardly ever spoken about because there wasn't much illegal immigration going on. It wasn't until Tony Blair got into power for his second term that things started to change. Now, as Liz Truss has been saying time and time again, during her 40 days as Prime Minister, her Home Secretary tried to close the southern border, just like Trump done over in the United States. You want to know what the principal private secretary for the Home Office said to Liz Truss as Prime Minister? No, Prime Minister, that's illegal. Did you also know that the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland has the legal standing right to tell the British Navy to get 3 destroyers or a couple of frigates to patrol the entire English Channel, as long as they're patrolling on the English side of the English Channel. In other words, there's a line up the middle of the English Channel. You've got the French side, you've got the English side. As long as the UK Navy patrol boats and frigates are patrolling on the English side, France won't say, "Oh, the Brits are going to declare war on us." But did you know that under the new European Court of Human Rights, along with the brand new Supreme Court set up by Tony Blair, that if the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland said to the head admiral or vice admiral of that division of the UK Navy, "Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Admiral, can you get a couple of your little frigates just to patrol the southern, down there, that half of the English Channel that's just off Dover. Don't cross into French territory, don't want to piss off the French, just patrol there." Do you know what the Admiral would be forced to say to the Prime Minister? Take a guess. "Sorry, Prime Minister, but under the Supreme Court, your order would be illegal." And I'm not joking, because Liz Truss, and not just Liz Truss, but the former leader, I was getting confused there with leader and deputy leader, but the former leader of the Tory party, William Hague, also said the exact same thing 5 years ago when it was still Theresa May as Prime Minister, that Tony Blair's setup of the Supreme Court and Tony Blair's wrapping of the European Court for Human Rights around the UK Parliament has basically made it so that the current sitting Prime Minister, if it was Nigel Farage, for instance, if Nigel Farage was in power right now, he would basically be unable to secure the English Channel. Because for all intents and purposes, he would be breaking Supreme Court laws and he would be breaking the European Court on Human Rights laws. Which is why whatever Prime Minister is in power has to have two things not against him, two things with him. A stonking big majority of over 100 to stop any dissent coming from across the floor from the opposition. And number two, that majority in Parliament cannot rebel against the Prime Minister. So that way the Prime Minister can essentially sign an executive order, even though we don't have executive orders here in the UK, but he can sign something similar, overriding the Supreme Court and overriding the European Court on Human Rights. And that way Farage can get patrols into the southern end of England, where the English Channel is. The Conservative Party now and the Reform Party, ever since Reform first started, have been banging on about scrapping the Supreme Court system that Tony Blair set up. They've also been banging on about removing the UK from the European Court of Civil Rights. And now you know why. Because it's those two institutions that worked against Liz Truss, worked against David Cameron, and worked against, to a certain extent, Rishi Sunak when they tried to get more patrols down in the English Channel. And if, according to these polls that you're seeing, wrong side Vic, these polls that you're seeing here, if these polls run all the way for the next 3 years and it turns out that Nigel Farage and the Reform Party end up with something akin to the same kind of majority that the Labour Party currently have, around about 130, 140 majority seats, the first thing that Nigel Farage needs to do to, number one, take care of illegal migrants, and number two, take care of the illegal migrants that are taking part in the grooming gangs raping small white British children. The first thing he would need to do is repeal the Supreme Court Act set down by Tony Blair and strip out the European Court of Human Rights out of the UK judicial system. And then he can take on the illegal migrant problem. The problems that we're all facing now, people, all of the problems that we're facing now, were originally laid down by Tony Blair during his second and last term as Prime Minister. Why? Because Tony Blair was laying the foundation for the UK to join the European Union, and secondly, for the UK to ditch the pound and start using the euro. One thing got in his way though: the war. If Tony Blair had played his cards right and not got involved with that war with George Bush Jr., if he'd have played his cards right and said to George Bush, look, sorry dude, I tried to get the UN interested in this, but they're not for it, and right now the British military is in no state to go to any kind of war, which they weren't. They were underfunded and undermanned. If Tony Blair had turned round to George Bush and said, look dude, we tried our best, but you're going to have to go it alone. If he backed off from the war, which he didn't, he went in both feet first, but if he backed off from the war, his approval ratings would have shot through the roof. He was already extremely popular as a Prime Minister right before that war started, but if he backed away from the war, his approval ratings would have been 70, 80%. The UK's now joining the EU, and everyone loves Tony Blair Everyone would have agreed with him. Tony Blair is one of the best politically minded prime ministers we've had in a very, very long time. The problem with Blair, though, is he started centre-right. He was basically a Tory. He was. He started centre-right and he started drifting into the centre and centre-left while trying to mix Conservative policies with Labour policies at the same time under New Labour. It didn't work out for him. Plus, his own ego got the better of him. He got involved in that war, which he never should have done in the first place. If he never got involved in that war, we would have lost the pound and we would still be part of Europe. That's a fact. That's a fact. Anyway. Batteries ran out, figured as much. Anyway, I think that basically covers it. Whatever kind of majority Nigel Farage is going to have, because let's face it, he's more than likely going to be the next Prime Minister, he's going to need at least a 100-seat majority sitting behind him in the House of Commons to offset any negative votes that will be thrown his way from what remains of the Conservative Party, what remains of the Labour Party, and what remains of the Liberal Democrats. Because this is the way that politics works in the UK. You've got something like 600 something seats for individual MPs, and each of those 600 MPs have to go to the House of Commons and put a vote in. Now, some votes, only 100 of them show up. But some of the bigger votes can take all night. And all 600 MPs have to go in under the whip and vote following party lines. It's that kind of vote where Farage needs at least a 100-seat majority. And by the looks of the polls, he's going to get it. He's going to get it. Anyway, that is it from me, folks. Again, I'm hoping there's going to be a video on tomorrow. If there's no video on tomorrow, which is Wednesday, you'll know why. And there's going to be no video. If there's no video on tomorrow, there's not going to be another one until Monday, because I'll be in hospital getting the eyes operated on. That's it from me, folks. Have a good one.